Bonjour tout le monde, merci de votre participation pour aujourd'hui. Comme vous savez, la session d'aujourd'hui qui se concentrera sur l'appui des documents ou les outils qui sont disponibles pour l'appui au ministère afin de favoriser leur leadership pour conduire le changement du secteur, sera le début d'une série de partages durant les 4 prochains jours. Donc, comme vous savez, le projet Ranouash financé par l'USAID vise à éliminer l'accès équitable et durable, améliorer l'accès équitable et durable aux services d'eau, d'assainissement et d'hygiène dans le but de garantir la santé humaine et la nutrition tout en préservant l'environnement. Dans l'objectif d'un changement positif dans la performance du secteur, Ranouash a adopté une approche systémique qui consiste à considérer les différents défis au niveau des finances, des institutions, du suivi et plus généralement dans les éléments constitutifs du secteur WASH, comprenant un ensemble d'acteurs que vous voyez à gauche de votre écran. Un ensemble de facteurs qui sont les 9 facteurs coloriés au milieu. Vous voyez coordination, finance, suivi, etc. Et l'interaction entre ces deux éléments constitutifs ou entre les facteurs ou entre les acteurs. L'approche, en fait, nécessite une bonne connaissance de ces éléments constitutifs, des blocages au niveau de ces éléments qui sont souvent les causes sous-jacentes des défis qu'on rencontre pour accélérer l'augmentation de l'accès aux services WASH. Elle nécessite la collaboration avec multiples acteurs pour relever les défis systémiques, ciblage, pour participer au ciblage des changements, à la conception du programme, à la mise en œuvre des actions de renforcement du système et de son évaluation. Et comme affiché dans le système tout à l'heure,
the reinforcement of the leadership is so important to autonomize the community and the private sector. So, as I mentioned, we first of all have to work in a holistic way for each of the interventions we mentioned earlier by building the capacity of the WASH system, and we can improve the system at the local and national level, which is going to reinforce the reaching of these objectives to improve health and education and the life quality of the population. And that's why we are working on the reinforcement of the WASH sector. And within the websites we are going to visit, if you can enter and tap ranwash.org. So if you go there, you can have access to the documents in the menu. And for today, we're going to work on the governance and monitoring of the WASH sector. So once you enter the site, you will have the list of the files that are shared that we're going to use for the day, for the 3 next days on governance mentioned here. So for today, we will revisit the leadership building of the government for the development of the sector. So for tomorrow, we'll see the reinforcement of the WASH system at the local and national level. And for tomorrow, we will talk about the local structures based on those systems. So I'm sorry for the mistakes. Mentioned earlier, today we're going to work on the available tools on the building, capacity building of the government on the development of this sector. So these tools are divided into, categorized into three parts. We have everything related to popularization of the system and the tools that we are using within this sector to support the coordination, planning, and of the sector. And on the other hand, we have tools on the monitoring of the performance of the sector. So you can have access to those tools, those documents, by selecting the tools for instance, if we open this system assessment on the WASH sector, then you can do a quick overview of the tools used by the regional directorates and to have an idea of the WASH system currently. Then you'll have the 12 building blocks on the left hand side of the slide. For example, we can take the instance of the fundings. We have 4 levels, weak, medium, and a strong. Be it the communes and the regional directorates can situate themselves per the descriptions given. And provided the situation of the targeted zones, and then we can do some more deepened analysis. And this tool is used to identify for the coming years and identify which actors which building block we are going to promote, ameliorate, and what are the points we have to work out and the constituents of the blocks that we have to reinforce. And eventually, on specific points during the implementation. So these are just a few examples. Here, I'm not going to download it. The second one is a tool we used to train, used by the ministry to train the communes and the regional directorates on the system approach. And this is an agglomeration of the tools that have been used. And when we open it, we have the presentation, the RTDs, and the printed tools for the training, but also the tools for the trainers and all the tools that were used during the trainings. So if we move on to, for example, the tools used for the assessment of the efficacy of the use of the system, then here we have the same tools. We have the grids for the WASH system with some descriptions. And here we have a tool for the assessment of the rate of participation of the CSOs and during the meetings, the sectorial meetings. Now, let's move to other tools that we may see in the documents, like those tools we use to support the ministry to elaborate, to reinforce the WASH sector. For example, we have the objectives and target per regions that were developed in 2021. And as we know, in 2021, we have the performance objectives, which is the popularization of the performance objectives. We have Alotamanguru, Amurumani, Amanamanga. We did some calculation to identify the rates we're going to reach for 2019, 2020, 21, 2022, and 2023. So we have the evolution we can identify at the level of each regional directorates based on the regional objectives, and we need to look at the plannings, joint plannings at the regional levels to identify those gaps and how to work out those gaps. And this is already existing for drinking water, sanitation, and the access to latrines. And here we have the number of people who have access to hygiene. And here we have the basic latrines that were built, and so on and so forth. And currently we're going to move to 2023, 2024. So we have to recalculate. And some other tools were developed for that sake. And with the latter, we can have a look at BPON, BPOR. I'm not going to open it because it is very, very heavy. And we may have the costs and for each local, and those files would help us to do some synthesis at the regional and national level. So this is a document, a tool that can be used depending on the prioritizing and of the objectives for 2023 and 2024. And as you can see, when you're going to download these files, we have structures which are identical to this one with some details inside. And here we have the objectives for 2017 up to 2022 until 2030. And for that we do some calculation and to have a bigger picture of the target percentage we have to reach within 5 years span, and to work, for example, in terms of objectives with the number of beneficiaries and the costs related to that. It's the same thing for you have the urban and rural areas. We have ODF, urban ODF, urban and rural ODF, and we can have the details of the calculation at the regional level. And this board is a simplified one in synthesizing those elements. And when you look at the other files, you may have every details you need. You have every details you need until the Fukutani level, up to the Fukutan level. And just to have a look at other elements, we also have some other tools. For example, we have the interactive map of the interventions and the actors on wash sector. And this is a document that the ministry has shared in 2019 or 2020, and it is used by each district and communes at the national level for water sanitation and hygiene related to all types of interventions. And this was used by the ministry based on the SESAM data available at that time. And one of the efforts we did during the meetings on the challenges of related to the monitoring and evaluation of the system. And we said that we have to reframe all the efforts on the monitoring and evaluation of the sector instead of focusing on the indicators on the system. And that's the reason why it was necessary to put in place a plan of monitoring and evaluation of the sector. And at that time, it was related to everything related to national policy of WASH. And inside, we've been working on this to support the implementation of SESAM. So we have a frame regulatory documents, and every time we work on an improvement, we have to go back to this frame regulatory document to improve the system and to facilitate the transition of the ministry, knowing that we observe some points for the last years within the ministry. So, for example, here we have different indicators we have to observe with the elements to be considered for that sake, and so on and so forth. So I'd like to invite you to open and read the document after the presentation. So we have all the elements related to those illustrations. So we have the nomenclature that are used by the sector and was updated in 2019, and which is going to be readjusted in the coming months. So the idea is to share those tools to enable to continue the efforts at the national level and to reinforce the capacity, and also to do the transitioning for the use of those tools. We have modules of training that we are trying to update into the system. I don't know if you have some questions, comments, or suggestions. Thank you. So you can write the questions on the chat, and eventually you can raise your hands in case you have questions when you are going to revisit the different tools that has been presented. I'm going to share a little bit the efforts we jointly combined with the ministry over the five last years to reinforce the sector, and as we mentioned, based on those tools, there is a group of people at the level of the ministry promoting the system approach, and they have the capacity to explain the WASH system with the use of the approach and system approach, and how it can be disseminated into the regions. And those people have been through different local trainings at the level of the regional directorates and communes of interventions of RANWASH. So they were catalysts in those approach, so that they can identify the undermining challenges and where we can reinforce when we speak of the 12 building blocks. And we have suggestions on the types of interventions in case of repeated challenges. And after the diagnosis, we can provide innovative solutions. And most of the time, the communes are using these tools for their annual review on the wash sector, and to identify the current challenges, and to put in place the intervention planning for the future intervention. The second point is at the regional level, we have to mobilize the different actors to think on wash system. For example, when we speak of ODF regions, we have to observe, to look at the plannings. It's not just to say that up to 2023, but what are the strategies, the plan to be detailed at the level of the communes, district and regions, and what type of joint interventions are to be implemented to reach that goals. And this is to answer the questions asked by Lalaina. And as I mentioned earlier, just a minute, we have to go back to the website of Runwash, and it's you have to browser into Google, and if I type Runwash, you have to click on Accueil Runwash, and you can find the different types of tools related to governance, the private sector, and behavior change, gender and social inclusion, and related to tools on governance. You have to click on it, and you have the tools that I mentioned on the green side of my screen. Does that answer you, Lalaina? Thank you so much. So for the exchanges, and we have training tools on the system approach and some manuals that you can improve or bring up some changes on those. The system approach tools are available at the level of at the sitweb, and for example, I can open the different tools that I shared with you. On the monitoring of the performance of the system, we have a tool that we elaborated for the regional level and the national level to support the ministry to elaborate, to improve Sesame. So here we have two tools that we shared, and based on the challenges encountered at the national level at that time. So when you open this, we have this tool, this one. This is a tool to identify the challenges in terms of tools on monitoring and evaluation of the sector. And this is not just limited to informatics file, but a bigger one. And based on this tool, you can have a look at the instructions and the strategies. How can we use this tool and every time you click on the Excel files, and you can also understand why and when to use this file, and inside for the information you can inform yourself about the districts at national level. Normally here we can have the chain of treatment of the information. We also have questions, information on the indicators used in the system, and they can inform you on the different types of needs. If you have a very powerful, performant system, you may have information on the users and the different types of classification per incomes, for example. And if you have some disaggregation per households, and the level of localization, and so on and so forth. So this allows us to have a general idea of the sector and to identify the amelioration points for the system for the future amelioration. We have everything related to the use of the system, the functionality of the system. We have questions related to the accessibility to those data, and that is a question that is asked, and series of questions on how we can use those tools, information on how the data are disaggregated, and those analysis would lead us to this graph for each region at national level. This one was done at the national level, where we have the perception of the people based on the different types of classification and monitoring of the system. We did it at the level of the regions, and we also use this tool for the communes, and they are using as well SESAM to do some assessment and see how they can improve their systems, or if there are some improvements to be done at their levels. We also have some information on the community feedback, like the case here. We are at the national level at the central ministry, and they said that they are collecting feedback when those beneficiaries are providing information. Runwash is the website. To what extent the website is available, and Sebastian has responded to that. Normally, the documents are available at the level of the CARE website. Would you like to talk specifically to some tools or documents? Is there something you'd like to discuss? So, these are the tools we used for the monitoring. As you know, Runwash supported the ministry to improve SESAM, and then we mentioned some tools, diagnosis tools, to improve SESAM currently, and we saw the monitoring evaluation plan of the sector, which is based on the project Politique WAS, which was integrated within SESAM currently, and we also have other elements We also worked on the coordination and mainstreaming, but we worked more on regional level. And for Ranwash, we have 6 structures of implementation and coordination. SRMO, which are operational, holding 1 to 2 meetings per quarter. Inside, we have different key documents, such as the DGs of the Committee of Coordination at the national level and regional level. So this allows us to frame the regions based on the roles and the responsibilities and the linkages to the national level. We have different regions who made good use of those implementation regional structures. For example, here we have the planner, projects and programs, enterprises, and the representatives of the users. And this is led by the regional directorates and supported by colleagues within the 5 regions of interventions. And for the region of Automatata, the region is the lead. So basically, at the level of the SRMO, we have the programs, and sometimes the enterprises are invited when the SRMO would like to share the situations at the regional level and discuss on the challenges of those enterprises. And at the level of Ranwash, we have those cases on. They are always invited and they are present during those meetings. Each region put in place some thematic groups, mainly for the case of Aknakarata, we have groups of SRMO discussing all the different themes. We also have groups of sanitation to update the situation based on Madagascar Madiu and see how the actors can intervene. I've not yet met with, I know I had the opportunity to meet with the GIR group. I've never encountered and I've never met with the drinking water and hygiene groups, but we had some sectorial events like International Day, Reforestation, or many others. We have different types of events organized by the central ministry and shared with the different regions. So these tools are available within the website. And we also have the justification and the frame document, which is the big umbrella of these documents. For example, we have the monitoring committee to follow, to assess the advancement of the application of some decisions. We have the CPP that was put in place some months now, and the way of coordinating the sector is on the way of operationalization, but we kept the terms of reference and to capitalize the different decisions that were made. Some tools that we also shared, for example here, which is available at the level of the ministry, the different reports of the meetings we had with the sector in July, and during this meeting we engaged, we committed on the types of interventions we have to implement for the coming years, like the contract of performance for 2023, and the access to those reports are needed to see the different types of commitments and to see where we have to concentrate. We have the list of the actors in the sector. So these reports were shared by the central ministry, and we put it here so that to help you find easily those documents. There's no question. If there's no question, Anta said that for some region, the SRMO, the DCRP, and the governments and the local actors, depending on the cases, in the region, Alautramangur, for example, last year, the SRMO should be led by the governors, because it is important to mainstream the other sectors, and the TOR is available to accelerate the access to drinking water, sanitation and hygiene, and to reinforce the impact jointly with the other sectors. Thank you, Anta, for the sharing. Can you share where regions are led by the DCRP? If you can share some instances about this. Where are those regions? Good morning, everyone in Diana. That's the case, actually. And in Imelaki, the DRSP is taking the lead. Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, we can hear you 5-5, and thank you for the sharing. And that is demonstrating the intersectoriality of the WASH as the sector, and the regional actors are working together, and that is important to make linkages with environment, education, and health, and many other sectors, specific sectors, and eventually with the private sector or others. Any other questions, comments? Or maybe you can share what's happening in your respective regions. So, regarding on regional planning, here, for example, we have the RunWash team. We have RunWash team and the central ministry developed this document for the coming years, and this study was carried out in 2020 and 2021, and this is a brief on the elements to be considered, on the challenges mainly encountered by the communes, the regions, and the national level in terms of budgeting and in terms of national needs. So you can see that there are tools that were developed at the regional level, like BPOR, which are not considered at the national level. And we have some missing of key responsible, and based on the efforts made within Ranwash, we have to continue the actions. For example, we put in place groups of actors, groups of agents within the central ministry, led by the Directorate of Monitoring and Planning of the wash sector, and they reinforced a tool that allows us to ensure the sustainability of the services and everything related to capital, capex, and any types of operations at the level of the communes, the sector, and the expenditure of the communes and the service managers, and see how the resources mobilized and how to estimate the direct and indirect supports, and that was planned up to 2023 for the supported communes, and those documents are also available at the level of the communes, but which are not yet uploaded in the system. And I'd like to invite you to tomorrow, because tomorrow we're going to have some discussions on the communes and the tools we're using in those communes. We have the training tools used by the ministry to do some trainings with those LCC, which are available within these seats and downloadable. And there are 5 trainers who accompanied the different communes in Madagascar. So here we have the tools we use within this project to ensure, to monitor the outcomes at regional level on coordination and planning of the sector. For the communes, we have the board of grid of evaluation of the wash system. We have different elements, and this is the grid with different elements, as you can see here. We have some monitoring of the efforts at regional level, which is on an Excel file, and we have the graphs related to that, and these tools were used in the regions. We also have a board for each regions for the regional coordination meeting, with the evidences and to identify the subjects of interest and to what frequency they are talking about those subjects, and the collaboration between the different sectors, and all that is summarized in this tool or board, and how the meetings were organized. And in some regions, and in some other regions, it is dispatched that this actor is going to take the leads for during the meetings. And in some regions, like the case of Antsinanana, they decided that the meeting should not last more than 2 hours, and that ameliorated the frequency and the concentration on a specific agenda, and the logistical needs for those meetings were properly managed. We also have another tool on the evaluation of the participation of the CSOs, and the CSO are very active because they are used to facilitate meetings, and most of the time they are very active actors. And for those tools, assessment tools to evaluate the participation of the CSO, we can identify if they are present, if they are providing information, if they have shared information, but the overall actors are not in the knowing. We have in certain and some regions where that is possible, and in some regions that is not possible. So we had to discuss with the actors there and see how we can organize meetings to trigger that participation. And for the monitoring of the projects, we have boards on monitoring of the STEFI used at the regional level. This is the technical and financial monitoring organized by the regional directorates in the 6th region of intervention of Ranwash. We supported the regional directorates to activate these monitoring tool to help them send the reports by the private operators to the regional level with the managers to see the quality of the services, the challenges faced by the operators and the communes, for us to come up with some recommendations at the level of the communes and the regions, and also for the enterprises. These are situation points. Ranwash has worked to put in place those structures, and this board is really important to inform when there are changes of actors at the regional level, and when we meet some challenges to work out. We also have a board used by the regional directorates and for the national level, and those who are using the SESAM, and this is a monitoring boards for the STAAH, and since the regional directorates are monitoring and mentoring the communes, providing the trainings for the communes, therefore we have a board that is fitted by the regional directorates, and this is giving us a global view of the situation of STEAH. So this is, and here we also have other elements which is considering the implementation of STEAH, implementation of PCTEAH, and the updating of SESAM. So these are being analyzed and collected at the regional level, and here we can say that this commune have received some support but did not come up to render operational the processing of the structure. And this can help us identify comments, feedback, and the reactions that are done to ameliorate the things and to see the types of results. So we have classifications for that. And what we're doing with the STOH, the STOH are providing some quarterly reports on the changes within the wash sector, the short-term results, for example. So this board is being used by the STOH, and they're going to send it to the communes. And this is the tool used by the regional directorates and for verification and monitoring with the STOH. And we also have other tools integrated with Sesam. And there are tools that are not actually used, but were used at the level of the lifespan of RunWash project during the implementation of the operationalization VSLC. And when speaking of governments, the information from RunWash are available within Sesam, but mainly the Sesam is focusing on the political data, but these elements were integrated in the indicators of monitoring of Sesam. And we're going to see how continuously we can use and insert those data. And we can talk about the mechanisms of accountability. There is also another tool, but not yet, which is not yet used by the regional directorates, but being used by the communes, which is the tool of the tool on initial budget or additional budgets to observe the evolution of the wash budget lines within the communes, and the percentage of the wash, the budget allocated to wash based on the overall budget, and to identify the actual expenditure of each communes. And those communes were trained for that, and the communes are going to activate those information with regional directorates for the monitoring on the communes, and to support the communes so that those budgets lines are used appropriately. So that is an instance of tools that are provided in this website. No comments. I'm done with my presentation today, and I entered into the available tools to present the contents and to take advantage of the remaining time. We have 5 minutes left. I don't know if you have some comments, some feedback on some specific tools. A tool that you've opened, and maybe you can suggest some other tools. and I'd like to invite our teams from the regional level to share the tools that they've been using. And we envision to insert some other tools by late March. For those who are, for the latecomers, is there something you'd like to say? If you have some suggestions or some tools that you'd like to share, then you can write on the chat box. And the idea is to encourage the sharing of those tools, because we are working in the same WASH system. And as we are working in the same WASH system, we are living in the same house, and when we do not have the choice to move on to another house, it's not good to have actors working on the sides, and that is having impacts on this system, and each and every one of us should capitalize the lesson learned from each actors to reinforce the system. No comments, no questions. So to sum it up, so RunWash supported the central ministry and the regional directorates to reinforce the WASH system in Madagascar. A great part of that have been constituted with tools to popularize the WASH system within the communes. And for the 250 communes of intervention of RunWash, currently are using the WASH system when they are coordinating the intervention of different actors, and when they want to assess the challenges they are encountering in the system. We have trainers within the central ministry, and some tools are available to ameliorate the system before and after RunWash is over, and those tools can be used in similar cases. RunWash also have at the national and regional level worked on the 12 building blocks mentioned here, and 5 or 6 block of the sector. We all know the efforts provided by RunWash on SESAM, also on the support of the elaboration of BPON for the planning of the communes and the regions of interventions, and the allocation of necessary costs for that. RunWash has also supported in the coordination in the communal and regional level within the 7 regions of interventions. We have the SRMO, which are very, very active and providing some places to jointly coordinate in different domains. And RunWash has work on institutional arrangement and asked the right questions on the roles and responsibilities of each actor faced to different challenges encountered by the sector, and to constantly go back to the key regulatory texts, and in the regional level, we've worked on different points, like the key points in terms of actor. At the national level, we supported the ministry and the regional directorates on their leadership, but also we worked along with the private sector to design together a development plan at the regional level, and to find their place as private sector. And the tools can be downloaded in the site web, and some can be found within the private sector, and some can be found within the behavior change, and the reference data needed to build the capacity of the leadership of the government can also be found. And to conclude with, what we'd like to propose is to move forward. We are working in the same sector. We have to exchange on our efforts. We need to help one another in this sector, and we have most of the time some project approach which is constituting a break to these linkages, and I think that we could have done better. More exchanges, frequent exchanges with the SRMO, with the regional directorates, with the national level. The idea is to render this sector. I don't know if you have questions, and I'd like to invite you to ask those questions. Thank you so much for your attention and your participation. And we hope to meet you in the coming days. And as I mentioned, Ranwash is proposing each afternoon for this week some exchanges, and we'd like to invite you to participate. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for giving me the floor. I've got a question on intersectoriality. Do we have a text on that stipulating that it should be the regional directorates to lead the WASH sector in the region? That is the first question. And the second question that we have mentioned, we have cases where we have other sectors leading the WASH sector in the region. How come? How do we work on the sesame feeding because it is a specific system for WASH, and if another sector is leading the sector, how can that work, and how can we use that system? Based on the CRP and the lead of the regional directorates, the texts are very, very clear, technically speaking, and it's the regional directorate which is the lead, and the texts are totally clear on the deconcentration and the participation of the private sector, and the governor is the first responsible in the region of intervention, and the regional directorates have to report to the governorates, and that is the circuit. Even if technically the ministry is centralizing all actions, the efforts in terms of deconcentration is proposed by the Ministry of Interior and Decentralization. The region should coordinate those interventions, and that's why what I shared, the governor asked to be the lead within the SRMO, and the regional directorates accepted, and because they know that can foster intersectoriality, and everybody knows that SRMO is one of the coordination structure which is active, and the other regional directorates are also invited to create that linkages. And currently with the Ministry of Water Sanitation and IG, and they mentioned their positioning. We have to reinforce the discussions. We have to keep in mind that the SRMO, the TOR of the SRMO, and see what the regional directorates can support and bring their contributions to the SRMO and find the positive points. And I think that the TCRP is leading the SRMO. This may be the demands from the partners. The issue is TCRP is going to push the WASH activities, and this would be remaining on the territory. And the idea is that the regional directorate is not leaving their responsibilities. And on CISAM, normally, as I mentioned, SRMO can push all the actors to update their data, and within the different actors, and that can work. And for that, if they are taking the lead, they have to work closely with the regional directorates for the updating of the system. And the SRMO are entitled to gather on a monthly or quarterly basis all the data. That is something that has not been covered fully, and they should be able to carry out their sectorial review and work jointly with the different actors for the data collection. And I think that is not preventing us to give opportunities for the governor to take the lead, but I'm afraid that they are occupied, busy to do something else, and that is one of the risks of giving them the lead. But we can also see ways on how we can exploit those tools. And in the TOR I shared, it is clear that the regional directorates should take the lead, and I think that these were amendments that were provided depending on the dynamism, enthusiasm of the regional directorates. Thank you, everyone. Don't forget that we have another intervention within 30 minutes time